School of Management Studies IGNOU presents an audiobook on the course MMPC-007 Business Communication for MBA program. Presenting Block 1 Introduction to Communication, Unit-3 Types of Communication, Part-2. Learners, in Part 1 we learnt about Introduction, Verbal Communication, Types of Verbal Communication and Nonverbal Communication. In Part 2, we will learn about Types of Nonverbal Communication.
Types of Nonverbal Communication. Let us now discuss different types of nonverbal communication. The categorization of nonverbal forms of communication is very difficult since there are a number of things that come under nonverbal mode of communication. However, we can broadly categorize it as kinesics or body language, facial expression, eye contact, sign language, proxemics and chronemics, paralanguage, metacommunication, haptics and silence. Kinesics. Kinesics can be understood as the study of the body's physical movements for the purpose of communication. In other words, we can understand it as the way our body communicates without words and using various movements of hands, facial expressions, eye contact, etc. For example, nodding of head communicates an acceptance or denial by the receiver. During the process of communication, some movements made by our body are conscious and some are done unconsciously. The conscious movements along with the unconscious movements play a very important role in effectively conveying our message. Let us look at the following parameters to understand kinesics in a better way, as these parameters play an important role in the business world. First, physical appearance. Personal appearance is not really part of the physical movement of the body. However, it governs our first impression in most cases. It is a prerequisite even before we begin communicating with someone. People form opinions about us just by our physical appearance. Physical appearance includes clothes, hairstyle, accessories like a watch or pen, or the kind of perfume we wear. The purpose of clothing and other essential items like a watch or pen has changed in today's world as mediums of expressing ourselves. A well-dressed person with appropriate accessories on him or her is considered cultured and educated as compared to a person who dresses to fulfill essential needs or does not have a neat hairstyle. Second, posture. It can be understood as the way we present ourselves. It includes the way we stand, talk, walk, sit, and hold ourselves while we move around during the process of communication. It is a variable component of communication and varies according to the circumstances we face while communicating our messages. It is a very important component since it speaks volumes about our personality. A nervous posture may reflect lack of confidence or a weak command over the subject. It also explains the amount of experience we have as a communicator in a particular discourse. A confident speaker has command and experience on the topic to keep the audience interested and motivated during the process of communication. We should not fidget with our mobile phones, play with a pen, or our legs and hands should not shake in order to maintain a confident and positive posture. Third, gestures. The movements we make with our hands, head, or face are termed as gestures. Too many or too little gestures may impede the effectiveness of the communication. Nodding our head in negation or acceptance on a viewpoint appropriately supplements the verbal communication, but on the other hand, it may make it ineffective if we used inappropriately. Too much or too little movement of hands should be avoided. It requires a fair amount of practice and preparation to use the gestures effectively. Fourth, facial expressions. Our facial expressions are an integral part of the communicative process since it expresses the intent of the speaker. We can understand the intention of the speaker by looking at the facial expression, and hence it becomes important for the sender of the message to supplement his or her words through appropriate facial expressions. For example, a motivational speaker needs to make sure that the facial expressions are positive and show the energy that she or he wants to convey to the audience. A negative or dull facial expression will contradict a positive and motivational message. Fifth, eye contact. Eye contact with the audience can change the effect of the message on the receiver. Our eyes communicate in various ways. A good eye contact with the listener or receiver of the message can make the conversation more powerful. On the other hand, avoiding eye contact may result in a disinterested audience and portray the speaker as weak and not confident. The audience may also have the impression that the speaker does not have a good command on the subject. It is important to establish appropriate eye contact. The speaker should not stare at the listener. Instead, try to establish eye contact to affirm that she or he is committed to convey the message to the listener. Maintaining eye contact reaffirms the audience about the keenness, confidence, and willingness of the speaker to establish communication with the listener. However, looking down or looking away conveys that the speaker is shy, nervous, or disinterested in the process of communication. Sign language. Sign language is a highly developed system of non-verbal communication. It uses audio, visual, and audio-visual signs and symbols to communicate. We have already discussed that sign language is the most popular mode of non-verbal communication. There are universally accepted symbols and signs and are widely used in the world. However, there are culture-specific signs and symbols and can be understood differently by people from different cultures. A thumbs up is a positive sign and used primarily to show agreement or motivate people in Western society. However, it is a sign of negation in the Indian subcontinent. Sign language can also be understood as communication through body language, gestures, and facial expressions. It is used in place of speech, and in some cases, it is also used to supplement oral communication. We have fully developed sign language for specific abled people. They use a different system of signs and symbols to communicate. There are different signs and symbols used by people to communicate. On the other hand, normal people use universal and cultural symbols to communicate non-verbally with each other. The most popular universal sign is a traffic light and is understood by almost everyone in the world. We do have cultural signs as well. In India, we use many signs which represent our culture. For example, the symbol of Om, frequently used in India, is known as the sign of the universe. We can see another example. The symbol V represents different meanings in different parts of the world. Let us have a look at those meanings. USA, it represents a symbol of peace. Australia, New Zealand, Ireland, and the UK, the symbol is considered to be a sign of rudeness and defiance. The sentence, "Are you an early bird or a night owl?" is a popular question to ask people if they wake up early or stay awake late at night. In this example, an early bird is a sign to wake up early and a night owl is a sign of staying awake late at night. These symbols and signs make our life easy and supplement our communication, making it more effective. Importance of sign language. We have already discussed the importance of sign language. Let us now understand it better. There are universal and cultural signs and symbols. We also have a highly developed sign language used by specially abled people. Think about establishing communication with people who speak a language other than yours. How will you communicate with them? How will you ask for food or water, etc.? Sign language plays an important role in such types of communication. We can just ask our hands and point towards a specific object and make signs as if we want something to drink in glass or we want something to eat. Think about a situation where a security agency is conducting a raid and they are searching an area. They do not want to make any noise and hence they need to use some signs to communicate with each other, or else it will jeopardize their search operations and compromise the safety of the security personnel. They will use visual signs to communicate. What do we do when we hear a siren from a police car, firefighter's truck, or an ambulance? These are audio signs that inform us that the police, firefighters, or medical staffs are dealing with an emergency situation. We give way to such vehicles when we see them flashing the lights mounted on their roof and or hear the siren. These lights and sound together are audio-visual symbols. They communicate with us about an emergency situation. It makes our life easy and helps us work efficiently. The effective use of signs and symbols is very important for successful communication in all walks of life. Proxemics. Proxemics studies deal with the necessary space or distance two people should maintain between each other during a process of communication. As the name suggests, it helps us understand the proximity, that is, the state of being close to a person according to the relationship. It is the study of the physical space between individuals. We display some sort of relationship with a person when we shake hands or hug them without any exchange of words. Edward T. Hall, in his study of proxemics, divides a space between people during an interaction into 4 zones depending on the relationship people share with each other. These are as follows. First, intimate. The intimate zone has the shortest distance between people. It only extends to 45 centimeter or 1.5 feet. This space is shared by close family members like parents, spouses, and relatives. This space is also shared between very close friends and lovers. A hug, pat on the back, holding hand, sitting in close proximity are some of the examples of communication which falls under this zone of communication. Second, personal. The personal zone begins at 45 cm and ends at 120 cm, approximately 4 feet. According to Hall, this zone is shared between good friends, colleagues, classmates, and some close acquaintances. This space indicates a certain level of familiarity between people. The more familiar the person is, the more she or he will be closer to the 46 cm mark and move away towards the 120 cm mark, depending on the level of familiarity. It is very difficult to maintain this space in modern society. Think about a ride in a metro train during office or school hours. Passengers stay in close proximity to each other, though they may be complete strangers to each other. It may be disturbing and uncomfortable to some people. However, it is not possible to avoid such situations completely in modern times. Third, social. This zone of communication is mostly formal and official. It begins at 1.21 meters, that is 4 feet, and ends at 3.60 meters, that is 12 feet. In this zone, we interact with people in official capacity, newly formed school or office groups, new acquaintances, or strangers. Interacting with complete strangers to ask for directions or in an interview is an example of communication in this zone. Fourth, public. As the reading suggests, it is related to communication in a public sphere. It starts at 3.61 meters, that is 12 feet, and may end at 7.5 meters, that is 25 feet, or to the range of eyesight and or hearing. Classroom lectures, seminars, training sessions are some of the examples of formal events in this zone of communication. An address by the President or Prime Minister of a country on Independence Day, Republic Day, or on any other occasion may also be an example of communication in this zone of communication. It is very important to understand the proper zone of proxemics, that is, to maintain proper distance during a process of communication to establish strong personal and social relationships. Chronemics. Thomas de Bruno, a scholar who studied non-verbal communication in detail, was the first to use the term chronemics to explain the function of time in the communicative process. In other words, we can understand it as the study of the use of time in human interaction. Time is a verbal resource, and how we use it in our daily transactions defines our behavioral pattern. If a person is late for an interview or sends late responses to emails, then it is perceived that the person cannot use the time effectively and create a negative impression. If a person arrives too early for an interview, then it may be perceived as over-eagerness of that person. Time can be monochromic or polychromic. First, monochronic time system. Edward T. Hall writes that it is part of the popular business culture where time is considered money. In this system, work is divided in small segments of time for effective scheduling, arrangement, and management processes. Hall considers the American viewpoint about time as monochronic, in which Americans view time as a commodity and it should not be wasted or taken lightly as it equals to waste or loss of money. Second, polychronic time system. This type of time system is defined by multitasking. Instead of small segments, time is viewed as a wider unit where many tasks can be done at the same time. For example, we can answer our cell phones while typing on our computer or taking notes. Polychronic time-oriented culture is popular in South America, Arab and Asian countries where time is not divided into small segments like monochronic societies where time is measured as per the cultural practices. Paralanguage. This form of non-verbal communication helps us understand things beyond speech and signs. When we answer a phone call and hear the other person saying hello, we instantly recognize the gender of the speaker and the voice if it is familiar. We can identify the person if we recognize the voice. We can also guess the state of mind of the person just by hearing the word hello. The listener can easily guess if the speaker is distressed or happy. The pitch of our voice, the tone of our speech can convey a lot of meaning. For example, it will have different effects if a teacher responds in a moderate pitch to an incorrect answer given by the student as compared to a loud response. In case of a moderate response, the student will not feel humiliated or scolded and will try to answer correctly in future. However, if the teacher shouts at the student, then it may be humiliating for the student and she or he may lose motivation to participate in future classes. Let us look at the following to understand paralanguage in a better way. First, speech volume variation. The volume of the speech should be appropriate according to the needs of the audience. It should not be too loud or inaudible. Second, rate of speech. It refers to the speed at which words are spoken. The speed should not be too fast or too slow. It should be adjusted as per the competency of the listeners. Third, pause or punctuation. It is very important to pause or punctuate at the right place or it may change the meaning of the message. You must have noticed that some people pause too many times and use non-fluency sounds like when they talk. We should not pause too many times and avoid using non-fluency sounds to communicate effectively with our listeners. Fourth, word stress. It is important to stress at the right word and right syllable of the word. For example, when we pronounce the word climate, the stress will be on the first syllable, that is CLI, and MATE should be unstressed. Correct word stress is essential for the success of an effective communicative process. Haptics. We can understand it simply as the language of touch. The way we communicate through touch is one of the most basic forms of communication. An infant communicates with his or her mother or other family members primarily through touch. An adult can also understand each other by this form of communication. Touching hands, kissing, slapping, hugging, etc. can come into this category of communication. Silence. It may be intriguing how silence can be a medium of communication, but surprisingly, it is one of the most common forms of non-verbal communication. For example, a person singing on a stage suddenly stops and becomes silent. She or he will attract the attention of all the people, including those who were not listening to him or her initially. A person accused of a crime can be assumed guilty if she or he remains silent when asked to present a defense. A moment of silence is a sign of respect at a funeral. A teacher can attain the attention of students in a noisy class by using his or her silence effectively. We convey a lot when we are silent. Silence can also be a barrier to communication. If we are silent when we are asked to answer a question or give our opinion, then it may impede communication. We need to use our silence judiciously to make our communication more effective. Meta-communication. This form of communication mostly deals with the interpretation of the message by the receiver. The term was made popular by an English anthropologist and linguist, Gregory Bateson. He proposed that the interpretation of the message is governed by all the verbal and non-verbal components of the communicative process, along with relation between the speaker and the listener. A speaker may say something, but it may mean something very different. For example, an ironic statement like the police station got robbed not only conveys that someone has looted the police, but another group of audience will interpret it as the incompetence of the police security. They were not able to defend themselves. How do we expect them to protect the general public? However, such an interpretation has its own limitations. The audience needs to have the competency to understand the irony of the sentence. Summary. We have learnt that communication is broadly divided in two categories: verbal and non-verbal communication. Both forms of communication are essential in our day-to-day lives. Oral, that is verbal communication, is supplemented by non-verbal communication. Non-verbal communication is not just limited to signs and symbols, but it includes a very large pool of non-verbal behavior. Our dressing sense, the pitch of our voice, the tone of our speech, gestures, facial expressions, eye contact with the listener, silence, our response time, etc., communicates with other people and helps us to establish a successful communication in personal and professional spheres. This unit gives a brief idea about various types of communication and their importance.
You are listening to audiobook by School of Management Studies, IGNOU, for MBA program. Course code MMPC-007, Business Communication, Unit-3, Part-2. Course Coordinator, Professor Neeti Agrawal from School of Management Studies, IGNOU. Voiceover by Santosh Bharati. Edited by Tarannum Jahan. Program assisted by Jagbandhu Jana. And program produced by Manoj Kumar Singh. This program was brought to you by Electronic Media Production Center, of Indira Gandhi National Open University.